Welcome to the Made for Agriculture podcast with Adam, Cameron, and Emily. Today's hosts are Adam Jones and Cameron Horine.
Good morning, everybody. This is Cameron Horine with the Made for Agriculture podcast. A little different this morning. Adam Jones, who normally you hear most of the time talking, he's out on a business trip, as well as Shannon McClintock. They're both out doing business or whatever they may be doing. They're not on the call today, but that'll be okay. We've still got the A team here to be able to put together some information for you guys. And so today is May 24th. Just kind of give you guys a time frame of what this conversation is being had. It's been another couple weeks of, and I think these guys will touch on it. Rain has been spotty. It's bounced in and out. I know kind of in the central area. I'm sure Scott will mention it. We've had probably a little bit drier spell for some areas, but I know Kevin, it's raining in his area again today, and they're calling for some more rain here, kind of spotty across the state. So we're kind of at that point in the year where it's spotty. You just kind of got to play the game of which field can you get to that didn't get a rain that evening, right? So today we're just going to kind of go through, have a conversation about what's going on in the areas, and if there's something that gets spoke on, we'll just kind of touch on that briefly. So we'll go ahead and start with Jesse down in the boot and kind of what's going on down there, Jesse.
Yeah, this morning, Cameron. Big still, the past 2 weeks just been grindy. I mean, in between rains and guys dealing with the mud and trying to get done what they can. The biggest thing is our wheat's really come along here the past 2 weeks. I mean, it went from being green in the last week, over the weekend, to I think there'll be some guys start it next week for sure. Next weekend, harvesting, and I mean it looks pretty good. So it'll be good to get that done. I mean, I can't ever remember cutting wheat by the end of May. Now on the flip side of that, there's going to be a lot of guys who are trying to finish up planting some corn acres, finish up first crop beans, trying to cut wheat, and plant double crop beans all at the same time. So it's going to be a mad rush whenever we get a big window. The corn, I mean, we got corn that's B10, B12 in places. I mean, it's row closure. It's up to my chest. I know I'm a short guy, but it's still up there for end of May. And we got beans that are, I guess, being planted so early, they're flip-flopping back and forth between R1 and R2. They'll hit R2 for a little while, and then they'll come back to being R1. And I figure that's the way it's probably going to be all year. When we get in, even into like the R3, R4 stage, they're probably going to flip-flop back and forth. And a lot of guys, like I said, it's just spraying, fertilizing, just trying to fit it in these windows that we got time. And the rice is the same way. I mean, we're to the point now we need to get water on it, but you still got to have fairly dry dirt to get the fertilizer on so you don't lose it, and then get your herbicide in so you can get a flood on and get everything activated. But it has been a better week for the most part. Everybody's been able to get something done for a couple of days, even with the spotty rain. So that's kind of where we're at.
Jesse, I know there's a lot more planes used in your all's area than a lot of the rest of our trade territory. With crops spread out so much and you've been wet, have you guys utilized planes more for some of the herbicide applications on corn and stuff, just kind of help hit that, or has people been able to keep up the ground rigs on some of that?
It all depends on your mindset. There are some guys that just are totally against airplanes for the most part outside of fungicide, so they'll rut up fields, whatever it takes to get it done. And I mean, I understand that because you don't get as good coverage with the airplane. But it's funny you said that. I don't know if it was last week or whatever. I just sat at Mom and Dad's. We were visiting, and I was counting 3 or 4 planes on a Saturday afternoon running, and I'm 99% sure they were either running on corn or beans. And normally it's a rice deal. That's for majority of the planes. So yeah. I'd say I get Snapchats there's a set of twins I'm friends with that fly. And pretty well for the last 30 or 40 days, I think I've got Snapchats for them almost daily of them flying. So it's been steady.
Cool. Kevin, you got any updates from the north?
Sure. Well, you'd mentioned it's raining up here again. It sure is. I can kind of, I don't know if you can hear the background or not through my microphone, but got some coming down. It looks like storm going to go clear across the territory again. Things have been, we have had some activity in the field, been pretty spotty, and it's been kind of tough to keep track of. If guys find a spot to go, they'll go. I've talked to some growers that said they were planting and they were surprised they were able to, and just kind of like in little pockets, every little area. Probably, it's always going to be, fit to spray a little before it's fit to plant. So we have been able to attempt to get caught up on some spraying. There's been some days where sprayers could run and it wasn't without being windy. So there have been some acres sprayed. Still a ways to go. Everybody's just paying close attention to ground conditions to be able to get stuff done. We're watching the weeds closely, watching the corn growth stages closely to, if we're getting to the point where, there's some herbicides that might be getting off label and having to make adjustments if needed. That's the challenges that go along with the wet spring. We've seen it before. It's not the first time, but everybody's doing their best to stay optimistic and doing what they can do to make it through.
Yeah, Kevin, I would say probably out of our trade territory, you guys are probably the furthest behind on corn planting. And I mean, I know, like I said, we're May 25th. Has there been much conversation about those guys that don't have corn planted about switching to soybeans? And then if so, have you guys been having conversations about like what herbicides you're using as you're trying to spray so that you can kind of do a flip-flop if need be?
Yeah. So yeah, those questions are out there for sure. To be honest with you, in previous wet years, it seems like those conversations have came up a lot more. And I not so much yet, but with it being almost June and, once June hits, guys are a little more hesitant to plant corn. Not always. Some have done it before, in some of her past wet years and had really good luck. So, I think guys are still willing to do it, but yes, that's definitely part of the conversation. If something hasn't been sprayed, or if we can spray a field, and may be too wet to plant, look at some products that might be able to work for both crops. Some group 15s, without any other components, can go ahead of corn or soybeans. But if we're spraying HPPD, atrazine on a field intended to go to corn, it's that you're committed to corn at that point. So there are some options. And then also too, you always, in top of switching crops, sometimes guys usually ask about switching maturities. We want to be careful there, not to go too early, and remember that 113-day corn hybrid, if it's pushing June, it does not take as many growing degree units to reach maturity as it does when it's planted at what we would probably call a normal time, like late April, early May. So corn will make adjustments there. We don't want to get too crazy and get ultra early hybrids planted late. Those corn hybrids that are bred for up north, they cannot handle our heat that we have, in July, whenever they're going to want to pollinate. So we do want to be careful there. We don't need to, if we do want to make some adjustments on maturities, we probably don't want to go much early than what we normally plan on the early end in any given geography.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Kevin, is talking about, plants are adaptable, and we think, especially, I think a lot of guys have the understanding of soybeans and maturities, they're photosensitive. So, it's not necessarily the day length, it's actually a night length that causes the flowering, right? But when we're talking about corn, there's a relative maturity of days, but really it's that flowering is really more on growing degree days instead of just actual days. And so that's a good point to talk about, is don't go over adjusting when you're trying to make a change on decisions from that standpoint. Scott, you got anything that's going on in central Missouri?
Probably a little similar to Kevin from the standpoint of, I've got about half a voice. So I'll try to make this brief if I'm capable of that. Kind of picked our spots this week. Quite a few beans had went in the ground. I think one of y'all mentioned just some of the ground just tough drying out. We've got stuff that's just pretty mucky, just whether it had any cover or, corn stalks, anything like that. So guys are having to be kind of patient on that. Corn-wise, Kevin made a good point. I noticed this a lot this week. We've got a lot of corn that's corn's probably in that V5 to V7 on a lot of our corn, some a little bit further along, the earlier planted, but the heights are all over the place. So as we start nearing those label restrictions that Kevin was alluding to, it can fool you in some fields. I was out earlier this week, looked at quite a few cornfields, and they ranged anywhere from 5 or 6 inches to over a foot tall, and they were all V5 to V7. So you really gotta break down and start looking at collars, and if you struggle with how to do that sometimes when you're missing leaves, just get online and Google. Purdue has a real good thing that you can look at. Just grow stage corn Purdue, and that'll take you to it. We're going to show you how to split the plant and how to link the leaves up to the nodes and know what you're dealing with. We're starting to see a little bit of starting to see the wheat kind of turn a little bit. I know we don't like talking about 2012 around here, but in 2012, that's the last time that we had wheat joint that as early as it did here. Kind of that third week of March instead of the second week of April. And there was, I know it's not as much of a thing down for Jesse as it would be here, but, there was actually a little bit of wheat starting to be cut that year on the 30th, the last day of May, 31st, isn't it? So I don't think we're going to be anything that early, but I think we will be looking at a very early wheat harvest. And right now, a lot of the wheat we're pretty hopeful about. Looks pretty good. One thing that we did start finding yesterday, we've actually got all 3 wheat rust diseases showing up in Central right now. I wish Shannon was here, and I should have called him or tried to get hold of him prior to this to see if his folks were finding anything. We've been talking about stripe rust forever. Leaf rust came in a couple weeks ago, and then seemed like I didn't go back and look, but probably 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks, I was reading down in Oklahoma they were finding stem rust, and we started finding stem rust yesterday. Our consultant over around Jeff City found it, and then a couple hours later, our consultant over north of Sedalia found it. And I was actually in the field with her when she found that one. So that's a disease I've never seen up here. I'm not saying we've never had it. I'm just saying I've never seen it. And I've been looking at wheat for 25 years up in the central area, northeast Missouri. So that was kind of interesting. With that, these winds we're getting out of the southwest are just really driving a lot of strange things. We used to always kind of I tease get the guys a little bit. We do these podcasts or we write our weekly article, and if I got time, I try to read everybody's, and I always read everybody's, but I really make sure to read Shannon's because he's down there in southwest Missouri, southeast Kansas, and he's kind of the sentinel for us. And I think with these winds we've been having, I don't think he's our sentinel. I think it's blowing right to him and through him and up to us, and we're just getting some strange stuff. We're in the last few days seen 5 different species of cutworms, 3 in one field, one that I've never seen before. I looked at a field of beans earlier this week. It was kind of a after the fact forensic kind of thing, but pretty sure that was an armyworm situation that wiped out a field. As we think of this stuff, if the pattern doesn't change, and it's a little early to be talking about this, but I'm already thinking about like southern resting corn. That usually comes in way late to where, yeah, we've got it, we talk about it, but we're far enough along that it's not really an issue. If this thing continues where everything's shoved 3 weeks early for, whatever it is, that could be a real thing this year. That actually does affect us further north. So those are the things on my mind, I guess, and kind of what we're seeing around the area.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Scott. To a certain degree, especially since we've been wet, we've kind of been a little thankful for the wind because it's helped dry out fields a little bit faster. Sunny, it's warm and sunny, that always helps drying out. But when you have wind, fields dry out a lot faster from that standpoint. But it does have a negative impact. It can have a negative impact on that as well as, bringing in early pests and diseases and having that impact. So just being proactive and looking at those, like you said, from that standpoint. One of the things I was going to talk about today and just get your all's feedback on it as well, as I was sitting here thinking, we are getting late. We're getting close to June. Sometimes growers, when they're dragged on planting the soybeans, they may make a switch and say, hey, I want to, save a little money and go ahead. How about I just go ahead and run untreated soybeans at the time instead of still having treatment? I think, and maybe you guys can touch on as well, but, making sure that we're still putting seed treatment on beans, even when we're in that first parts of June, it's really critical and can have a huge impact on the final yield of that. A lot of times we think about those, early season diseases, the Pythiums, the Phytophthora, those are like cool, wet soil temperatures, but we still have some of these diseases that thrive actually in warmer soils, from that standpoint as well. So making sure that we're having that discussion and still keeping guys having that seed treatment, I think is super critical.
Yeah, it's still wet. Yeah, like you said, there's Rhizoctonia. That's one that does like a little warmer conditions. So that your basic fungicide treatment's going to have protection against that, and then others. But yeah, not all diseases like cold and wet. There are several bad ones that like warm and wet.
Well, the other thing, Cameron, too, we're cutting seeding rates back so often. I had multiple calls yesterday on some replant or spotting in type situations, and some of the numbers that were thrown to me, and I get it. I mean, soybeans are expensive relatively, compared to how it was back when everybody planted 180 to 220 maybe. But still, we're running it really, really kind of fine at times, and need to stack the odds in our favor. So yeah.
Does anybody else have anything they want to touch on? Jesse, I saw you just unmuted. Well, maybe.
Well, we didn't talk about the insecticide piece of the seed treatments either. I mean, we've got some pockets of aphids and thrips that are between it was cooling right at the beginning, then we warmed up, and then we got these insects, and then we started spraying beans, and some of these beans just aren't coming on as fast as what they probably should in some pockets. So don't forget about your insecticide piece of that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And, just a lot of these insecticides that are in seed treatments, they are systemic. So they are, when that plant is growing, it's not just a protectant on the seed kernel itself, but that plant is uptaking that insecticide and protecting it as, insects do eat the foliar part of the plant as well. So,
on the insecticide thing too, I know there is some replant corn still, and even corn being displanted. You're still getting these, getting the alerts for the cutworm moths. So just because you're planting tail end of May or even 1st of June corn, we're still going to have little bitty cutworms out there ready to eat. And we're still getting called out to look at them. I mentioned the bean field, like I said, pretty sure that was armyworm, but I've looked at a lot of corn, and some of it pretty severe, where we talked about getting a plane in, if things didn't straighten out pretty quick. It's not, I've alluded to this, I think, in the past. It's not like it used to be where you go out and just overnight the field's wiped out. But, there's one here, there's one there. Next thing you know, you've got 10%, and you're just watching this otherwise pretty standard corn. That you've done everything to just space it right and everything just start to get thinned out. So for a few bucks, you can make that issue go away.
Awesome. Well, unless somebody else has anything else, I think we'll wrap up today. Again, appreciate everybody takes time to jump on and listen every 2 weeks. We'll be back. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Be able to hopefully, Jesse will probably be able to touch on some wheat harvest that started, and hopefully, at least Kevin's area, maybe we'll start drying out and they can really get going on some stuff instead of getting rain every 2 days, and really slow them down.
Yeah, next time I'd like to be able to tell everybody that planting is finished.
Right. So appreciate everybody jumping on. Thank you guys again, and enjoy your long weekend for Memorial Day.
What long weekend?
Well,
That's what I was going to say.
Maybe
enjoy your holiday weekend. Let me put it that way. Enjoy your holiday weekend.
Thank you for listening to Made for Agriculture, brought to you by MFA, your whole farm solution.